It seems that a lot of DMs would kill to have their players react like this at their game table.
Oh my god.
But you don't need to get your hands dirty. I learned what to do to have my players gasp on the edge of their seats in anticipation and lower their eyebrow in puzzlement. It's a new trick with 4 simple steps. VUCA. VUCA. Ever heard of that? You might have, because it's not that much new. I simply added a pinch of Hitchcock in this portion of the Pentagon. You see, in the late 80s, the US Army adopted the VUCA acronym to better understand the post-Cold War world. Turns out, it's also an outstanding storytelling tool because it deals with information. You can build up tension in your homebrew adventures if you manage to shape the way you feed information to your players using the concepts of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And keeping your players informed is the best way to create suspense. It ain't me who said that. The master of suspense himself did. Would you rather have your players invested in your adventure for 30 seconds or 30 minutes? That's the difference between surprise and suspense. There's an essential distinction between them, and yet I have the feeling many DMs confuse the two. I'll explain what I mean. Imagine that we are at the yearly ball of the local ruler. Publicly, Lord Romilde is seen as an eccentric and amusing figure and not remarkably competent as a leader. His main virtue is letting the townsfolk mind their own business. That is, however, simply a character that he created for himself. He is in fact very clever and secretly runs a major corruption scheme to misappropriate resources from the townsfolk. We were personally invited to his ball, an opportunity that we'll use to find evidence in his castle to incriminate him. At a certain point during the festivity, we are invited to join him privately at his library. He's heard of our past deeds and is excited to listen firsthand to our tales. He lights up his pipe and joyfully says, "I'm most keen to listen to how you killed the trolls in the woods. Please don't let any detail go by." We barely start our story and someone knocks on the door. It's a messenger carrying a letter. Lord Romilde reads it carefully and we see his buffoonish face change to menace. It says here, "You are spies trying to overthrow me. Guards!" Nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're in a big trouble. We're surprised, but prior to this surprise, it was an absolutely ordinary encounter of no particular consequence. Now, let us make this a suspenseful encounter. As we head to the library, Dahlia, an allied NPC that infiltrated the ball with us, whispers to you, "Carefully, I've just got news that we might have been compromised. A messenger is on its way carrying a letter to inform Lord Romilde." We sit with Lord Romilde by the library hearth amidst comfortable furniture and luxurious art pieces we're not used to seeing. The room is almost silent, isolating us from the distant noise of the ball in the main hall. It doesn't take long for someone to knock on the door. "Come in," Lord Romilde says. We startled for a moment, wishing we had our weapons. "The wine, my lord." Whew. We try to make the conversation as short as possible. A few moments go by, and there's another knock on the door. A messenger says he has a letter. Lord Romilde immediately orders him to place it on his desk. The messenger tries to argue that the sender said it was a pressing matter, but Lord Romilde tells him not to interrupt and to do as he says. "Go on, I want to hear about them damn trolls." The letter sits on his desk. We push on with our tale. Not far into it, we see Lord Romilde looking at his desk while we speak. He gets up, walks toward his desk, picks up the letter, looks puzzled at its seal, grabs a book that was below it, puts the letter back down, and comes to us, showing a picture on an open page and asking, "Did the trolls look like this?" Now, I know you already have ideas about what you would do. Whatever you're cooking over there, chances are it will lead to a sleight of hands over the letter. What if you fail? When you're about to get your hands on the ladder, Lord Romev says, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess my attention is divided after all. You there, by the desk, would you mind opening that ladder and reading its content to me? By now we're freaking out at the game table, half laughing, half mind-screwed. You recompose yourself and tell me, I'll handle this. And maybe you do. And if so, we go on with more frivolous talk for a few minutes until we're done. Lord Romev then escorts us out, and when he's about to close the library door, he says, Wait, I can't seem to find that letter. You remember where you left it? And that, my friend, is the difference between surprise and suspense. In the first case, our DM gave us 30 seconds of surprise at the moment the letter was opened. In the second, we were gifted with 30 minutes of gut-wrenching anticipation. All right, go on, tell me, what would you have done? That is the concept of volatility, the V on our VUCA acronym. We're fully aware of the present situation and know quite well what it can turn into. In this case, what creates suspense is that the present situation is wildly unstable. Everything can dramatically change at any minute, and if it does, it can bring fast and strong consequences. We're kept on the edge of our seats, feeling that the clock is ticking, sustaining the high tension of whether we can avoid or not what is about to happen. But that's certainly not the only way to create suspense in our adventures. When there is an important turning point ahead, I keep my players scratching their heads by feeding them constant drops of information. As they can't see the entire picture, they have to put the pieces of the puzzle together. That's more exciting than waiting for one big final revelation with not much happening in between. Let me show you how I do that. Suppose we're helping Salvador Ortega, formerly an affluent merchant of Arabelle, who has now become a revenant. He ascended to undeath to revenge his and his sister's violent murders. The point is, his youngest sister was burnt alive, or so we thought. We're halfway through the adventure when we finally open Inez's tomb. Salvador looks at his sister's remains, but we don't see remorse or sadness on his face as we would have expected, and rather shock. He says, "This is not my sister." Booyah! Plot twist! But we can make it even better if instead of one big surprise, we build up suspense all along the adventure, keeping players engaged as they uncover several small revelations along the way, which in turn can bring even more suspense. So let's add all of that. At the beginning of the adventure, when the city marshal assigns us the investigation, he shares an unsigned letter. It reads, "It isn't Inez's corpse. See for yourself in her chamber. Your men are not to be trusted." You lower your eyebrow. Something's off. I say, "We should check her chamber in the family's manor." You respond, "Wow, great idea. How did you come with that, Sherlock?" To which I reply, "Save your sarcasm to yourself, Jonathan, and just keep watching the damn video." We're now at Inez's chamber. It is quite austere for a member of a wealthy merchant family. Inexpensive furniture and a single painting as decoration. A depiction of Inez in her teen years, playfully running barefoot towards her mother in idyllic scenery. She wears a white dress and a necklace made with a beautiful pale blue gem. But then we spot something weird. We get closer to the painting and can now see it clearly. A curious and almost unnoticeable detail. Inez's left pinky toe is missing, as if the girl's foot had been severed in some incident. We rush to the family mausoleum. We open her crypt. The burned corpse is right there. All 10 toes. Now we're all looking at each other at the game table, jaws dropped and eyes wide open. So many questions. Is Inez alive then? If so, whose corpse is that? Why would the murderers replace it? We can't help but get hooked on every new detail of the adventure until its very last second. That is the concept of uncertainty, the U in the VUCA acronym. As we start, we clearly know the information we have is incomplete. We can only speculate how a current event came to be or may evolve, and there are not enough clues to judge accurately which suppositions are more likely than others. As the adventure develops, new bits and parts are constantly revealed at the right moment. That's also a good example of how to keep the storytelling happening in the present and how it's possible to effectively tell it through objects the characters interact with. A letter, a painting, and not without a pinch of gruesomeness, definitely remains. Using uncertainty, we get the feeling right from the start that there's much more going on than we have yet figured out. That brings anguishing curiosity and tense anticipation to our table as we eagerly try to assemble the puzzle pieces. It keeps us fully aware, expecting the unexpected in every step. Before we realize it, we're deeply immersed in an intricate and compelling story. Contrary to what many GMs believe, an effective way to create the element of suspense is to keep your players informed. Yes, you heard it right. Don't hide anything. Don't you believe it? I'll show you. Imagine our party is currently with Raedra, Queen in Exile. She's been our patron in past adventures with whom we've had a tense relationship. We've defeated enemies that were a threat to the nation, but some of our characters are enthusiasts of a change of regimes. And so it happened while we were fighting at her side. A coup overthrew the crown and established the Republic, much to the initial satisfaction of some of us. Here's the catch. Raedra tells us that the Queen Mother is kept prisoner in the royal castle by the revolutionary forces. She fears for her mother's life and urges us to rescue her, infiltrating the castle through its underground catacombs and secret passages. Now, holding an old lady as a prisoner simply for her royal blood doesn't seem to be the most exciting way to set up a freer and more just regime, does it? We discuss among us what to do. We've met the Queen Mother before, and we know she's a decent person. Rescuing her is a humanitarian mission at its core, but with direct political repercussions. It would increase the chances of the crown prevailing in the current uprisal, and some of us are not enthusiastic about that. Denying the quest would mean the end of our relationship with Raedra. Taking it could set us as enemies of the Republic. We decide to gather more information. We talk to the people whom we trust. Nicholas Brightwood, head of the Church of Lathander and our cleric's patron, is familiar with the political schemes of the nation. He is confident that the nobleman who led the revolution is power-hungry and that the Queen Mother's captivity is simply an early sign of a regime bound to degenerate into tyranny. Ailoane, our rogue's older sister, is enthusiastic about the changes. She gives examples of how acts of the Republic have provided more rights and freedom to the people than the crown had done in years, and how the new regime had the internal mechanisms to solve its contradictions, contrary to the monarchy. And besides, what would we do if we were to lead the revolution? Set the Queen Mother free and increase the chances of a civil war? We consider different courses of action. We can act to rescue someone we like who is wrongly imprisoned, or we can not act. We can try to concert a diplomatic solution. Heck, we can snitch on Queen Raedra's location to the Republican forces. The more people we talk to, the more we're sure that a flawed regime with a decent leader was replaced by a better regime with a flawed leader. There is no clear solution, only tough choices. We've got to ponder every step we take, for they will all have direct consequences for us and the future of the nation. That's an example of complexity, the C in the VUCA acronym. All the information is available, and we can calculate future scenarios considering them. What creates suspense is how we will act to the many moving parts and their high stakes. Whatever we do or don't do can dramatically change our stance from heroes to criminals and help determine who the people in power will be. The right amount of complexity stimulates us to think together and speculate how the situation can develop. Every small decision becomes important, involving us in the story. It keeps us wondering if our assumptions will play out as anticipated or if we're about to do something really wrong. The complexity of the present makes the future very much unpredictable, fueling us with puzzlement and excitement. We all love when our players are engaged in our adventures to the point of fully embodying their characters. So how can we turn our game sessions into such emotional roller coasters? By creating an exciting ride that alternates between suspense and surprise. Suspense and surprise. One way of building up tension is by offering conflicting information. Most of an adventure's story is presented through NPCs. But what if NPCs are biased by their own opinions? We are urged to take action, but we are unsure which parts of what we know are facts and which are not. Suddenly, we're tangled in our own anticipation to uncover the truth. Wanna see how I do that? After 10 years of peace, the kingdom of Cormyr is again on the brink of war. A barbarian horde of orcs looms on the storm horns, ready to strike at any time. The northern border of the realm is sealed by the Stonecliff, a craggy limestone escarpment that stands like a natural wall, barring intruders away. The only passage for an army is the Evening Star Gorge, where the Purple Legion has set its troops. Our mission: to move behind enemy lines and infiltrate the mines of Gunteril through a forgotten passage where half of the orc troops are established, and gather intel on the aggressors. We depart at sunrise, and that gives us time to run the Purple Camp at night and talk to some officers. We first talk to Oversword Bentorir Gunteril, an exiled dwarf warlord who ascended in the Purple Dragon's ranks. He's sharp, ruthless, and hot-headed. He was the commander of the mines of Gunteril army years ago when an orc strike took them by surprise and massacred his dwarven clan. Bentorir was scarred in the battle, losing his right eye vision and leg movements, now tethered to a giant goat he uses as a ride. Oversword Bentorir argues that the Purple Legion should advance position right away while the enemy forces are split into two different locations to avoid fighting a stronger force. He says that the Purple Legion leadership is divided, but the reason for that is the typical contempt the humans of Cormyr have toward other species. They're foolish to underestimate the orcs. They're tough as nails. They would not gather if they didn't have the means to strike. I'm certain they have some unexpected, wicked tactics. If we don't move, they will, and when they do, it will be too late for us. We also take our time to visit Battle Master Cedric Marlier, Lord Commander of the Purple Legion. He's a calm and thoughtful elder, veteran of many battles. He argues that the best move is to stand the ground and grant a favored position. An invasion through the high, narrow, and rocky Stonecliff passage is bound to fail. If the Purple Legion stays put, the orc invaders are locked with no options. He says that Oversword Gunteril craves to engage the orcs and that his burning desire for revenge clouds his point of view. The sun rises, and we march toward the orc stronghold. We sneak into the mines of Gunteril. There, within an enormous hall, we see it. Hundreds of hang gliders made of giant bat hide and 3 large enchanted zeppelins. At our game table, some of us gasp and others cover our mouths. The forces of Cormyr are certainly not ready for that. We must return as quickly as possible and warn the Purple Legion. That's an example of ambiguity, the A in the VUCA acronym. The available information is open to more than one conflicting interpretation. It's impossible to distinguish which is factual and which is biased by our personal perception, opinion, or agenda. A wrong move could risk hundreds of soldiers' lives and even the future of the kingdom. There are clear risks and benefits to standing the ground or advancing the troops, and it is a tough call to make. There are two options and clear signs that one or both could be biased. The truth is somewhere out there, and its pursuit backs our engagement, as well as our character's distress. After all, there's a lurking danger within the possible outcomes. Only when we finally unveil the mystery behind the curtain and the suspense resolves can we savor our triumph, or anguish, for the worst may be yet to come. We all like to see our players gasping on the edge of their seats during our game sessions. I learned to build up suspense my adventures using the VUCA acronym: Volatility, Uncertainty, Complexity, and Ambiguity. In other words, I make clear to my players that events may change quickly, that they might not have the whole picture, that they have to think their decisions through, and that the NPCs' points of view may be questionable. If that's useful for you, subscribe and follow our social networks for more content. All links are in the description below. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We are the Deep Dice Press.